Hello, my dear students. I am Dr. Nivedita Saha, Associate Professor of the Department of Political Science, University of Kolkata. Today, my lecture is on Rammohun Roy and specifically his concept of modernity. Now, what are the objectives of today's lecture? This lecture would acquaint the learner with the meaning attached to the expression Indian Renaissance and Roy as its pathfinder. Rammohun's concept of modernity, why he advocated Western education, his differences with Derosians and the conservatives, his concept of modern state. Raja Rammohun Roy was designated as the first liberal of India by Ramchandra Guha. He was described as the Bharat Pothik or the pathfinder of India by Rabindranath Tagore. He has left behind a highly contested socio-cultural legacy, and his views and vision continue to generate heated controversies even today. And that is why he is relevant, his thoughts are relevant, his thought of modernity, his thought of liberalism is relevant, and it has been included in your syllabus. In 1933, a meeting was held to commemorate the centenary of Raja Rammohun Roy's death. Several eminent thinkers participated in this meeting, like Rabindranath Tagore, Radhakrishnan, Bipin Chandra Pal, and all spoke of him as the father of modern India. In his address entitled Inaugurator of the Modern Age in India, Tagore referred to him as a luminous star in the firmament of Indian history. Rammohun Roy was the inaugurator and leader of the Indian Renaissance, started in the first quarter of the 19th century. Now, what is Renaissance? Renaissance is an intellectual movement which started in Europe when, with the advent of modernism, with the advent of science, with the advent of technology. When people in Europe began to think rationally. With the end of medieval period and with the start of modern period, Renaissance began. Renaissance ushered in modern period in Europe. It is people began to think rationally, people began to question everything. Before that, what did people believe? People believed that king is a representative of God on earth. And if you revolt against king, that is, you are revolting against God. What you are doing is a sin. You cannot do that. There was no reason, there was no logic in medieval Europe. But with the ushering in of science, with the ushering in of technology, with the ushering in of industrialization, people began to think rationally. People began to question. People began to find out the reason behind everything. And that is Renaissance, which began in Europe and which is believed to have began in the first quarter of the 19th century in India. It is true that any intellectual movement like Renaissance can never be the creation of one individual, because these movements are end products of joint or cooperative efforts of a number of people or leaders. So when we say that Raja Rammohun Roy was the inaugurator, people, those who try to debate, or there is a debate that a person like Raja Rammohun Roy cannot individually bring about Renaissance in India. It is always an end product, it is always a joint or cooperative effort of a number of people or leaders. So Raja Rammohun Roy cannot be said that he individually brought in a Renaissance in India, an intellectual movement like Renaissance in India. But at the same time, it is also true that movements like Renaissance is led by few distinctive persons or leaders whose vision inspired the whole group and also the mass of people. But we should remember that movements like Renaissance have few distinctive persons as leaders, and Rammohun Roy was a leader who ushered in, who inspired the whole group of people and the mass of people to usher in the Renaissance in India. Rammohun Roy was the pioneer. He was the pathfinder. He was one such leader who ushered in Renaissance in India, who made people think rationally, to question everything. His notion of synthesis of tradition and modernity, fusion of all the religions, affected a balance between reason and faith. That is, when he tried to combine tradition of India and modernity of Europe, and he established a balance between reason and faith. When he tried to combine the tradition of India and modernity of Europe, then he effected a balance between reason at one hand and faith at the other. He tried to bring in or blend all the religions, and he tried to find a common thread in all the religions of the world, be it Islam, be it Hinduism, be it Christianity. He tried to find a common thread in all the religions of the world. That is, all the religions of the world believe in the existence of one supreme being. And this is how he tried to effect a balance between reason and faith. Now, what was the historical context in which Raja Rammohun Roy was born? Raja Rammohun Roy was born at a time when India was passing through political decay, economic regression and social degeneration. The last powerful Mughal emperor, Aurangzeb, died in 1707. India entered into a period of political decay. Agriculture, industry, trade, commerce began experiencing a decline in production. In social and cultural field, religious superstitions and extreme sectarianism dominated. India entered the zone of uncreative habit, decadent tradition, low human values and stagnant education and culture. Rammohun Roy grew up in this atmosphere, and therefore he tried to rectify the situation. He strived to bring about pioneering socio-religious reforms, which were followed by his contribution in the field of education, language, literature and politics. Now we understand about his concept of modernity. Rammohun Roy's quest for modernity was governed by two rather interesting factors. Now, what are these two interesting factors? First, his vast knowledge of the languages of the Orient, that is, Sanskrit, Arabic and Persian. He knew different Indian languages like Sanskrit, Arabic and Persian. Apart from the classical languages of Europe like Greek and Latin, he also knew the classical languages of Europe like Greek and Latin. Apart from English and French, which he picked up later in his life, he picked up English when he was 24 years old. In total, he knew near about 10 languages. His perception of India was thus initially mediated through and was solidly grounded in the Orient culture. Unlike the Western Orientalist knowledge of the Orient, he was not a European, he was an Indian. as a European viewing the East from the perspective of Europe. No, he was an Indian who viewed India from the perspective of from the perspective of India. He was not an European viewing the East from the perspective of Europe. No, he was not an outsider. He was an insider who knew about the Indian culture and Indian civilization. Second, the encounter with the West took place in this background. What was the second interesting factor about his concept of modernity? The encounter with the West took place in this background. Because of his vast, he knew about the Indian culture, Indian civilization, because of his vast knowledge of Indian languages. And the encounter with the West took place in this background. This enabled him to bring a negotiation between the Eastern tradition and Western modernity, but on terms of the East, not of the West. He had assimilated the essence of both Hindu and Islamic religion and culture. He knew about both Hindu and Islamic religion and culture, and that helped him to adopt a completely non-communal philosophy of life. Because of his vast knowledge of languages, because of his vast knowledge of Islam, vast knowledge of Hinduism, vast knowledge of Buddhism, he had a non-communal philosophy of life. And when this non-communal philosophy of life came in contact with Western influences like Western science, Western technology, Western culture, and Western value system, his philosophy of life became truly modern and universal. He successfully assimilated the thought and value systems of the East and the West. If modernity is an outlook picked up from Europe, its parameters being reason, science, and dignity of individual, it is true that through Rammohun, the spirit of modernity reached India. The spirit of modernity reached India through Rammohun. The parameters of modernity being reason, science, and dignity of individual. In his hands, modernity became a weapon to fight the stagnant feudal order, the conservatism of the Shastras, and the drive of the missionaries to indoctrinate the Indian mind with Christian values. Now, why did he advocate Western education in India? Rammohun Roy found the British rule as a blessing for the 19th century Indian society. He found the British rule as a blessing for the 19th century Indian society. Now, he identified a number of positive dimensions of the Western thinking and education. What are these positive dimensions? First, this type of open and scientific education would liberate the Indian mind from blind religious doctrines and social prejudices. It can give a logical bend of mind to the Indians. Indians can now question, they can reason out, they can question, they would build within them a mind which would be backed by logic, which would be backed by reason, and they would question everything. Thirdly, it would modernize Indian culture and education. Fourth, he saw in this new education the seed of Indian Renaissance. He believed that through this Western education, through this new education, a change can be brought about in India. This new education would be the seed of Indian Renaissance. Fifthly, this appeared to him the path of mental and intellectual liberation of Indian mindset. Through this education, the Indians would be mentally and intellectually liberated. Thus, he advocated the urgent need to introduce Western education in India. Therefore, he advocated the need to introduce Western education in India. But we should not forget, he was aware of the exploitative nature of the company's rule. He was a person who was aware how the company exploited the Indians. Yet, at the same time, he favored the company's rule because through this Western education, it would help the Indians to liberate their mindset. There will be intellectual liberation. So therefore, in 1816, he founded an English school. He played an important role in establishing the Hindu College in Calcutta in 1817. Later on, this was converted to Presidency College in 1857. 1825, he founded the Vedanta College, and in the Vedanta College, Western knowledge was to be combined with Indian learning. And the subjects which were to be taught, which he advocated, were English literature, Western science, European cultural heritage, history, modern philosophy, social and medical sciences. This is the picture of Hindu College, was first established in 1817. Presidency College. This Hindu College was converted to Presidency College in 1857, and this Presidency College was later on converted to Presidency University in 2010. This is the picture of Vedanta College, which was established in 1825. This would vastly widen the vision of the new generation of Indian youth. It would widen the vision of the Indian youth. He was conscious of the rich treasures in India's own culture and civilization, but he wished to assimilate the good and noble values of Europe into the Indian culture, into the Indian tradition of ancient and medieval India. That is, what did he try to do? He tried to assimilate the good and noble value system of Europe into Indian tradition, into Indian culture. That is, he tried to combine the good things of both the East and the West. He did not neglect the East. He did not neglect the Indian culture. No. He tried to assimilate the good and noble values of both West and the East. He tried to assimilate, he tried to blend, he tried to combine the good and noble value system of both the Europe and India. Thus, in order to meet the needs of the contemporary India, he untiringly worked for social and political reforms. But he knew that this was not his long-time solution for India's multifarious problem. He knew that just by educating them, just by giving them Western education, we cannot solve all the problems. It was not a long-term solution. It was just an immediate prescription, for he believed that the succeeding generations of Indians would take up appropriate decision on a model of modern polity. He realized the historical importance of the rising middle class in India and visualized a sovereign Indian state in course of time. That is, he realized the importance of rising middle class who would be educated, who would be liberated, and they would establish a sovereign Indian state in due process, in course of time. He had full faith in the English-knowing modern elites of India, who would play a significant role in shaping a free and modern polity in India. That is what I already said, that they should be educated. They should have through education, they should have a liberating mindset. And in future, this English-knowing modern elites, this middle class would take a appropriate right decision on what shape the future India would take. This idea of Rammohun Roy was revealed in his various articles and essays, which were written during the last 5 years of his life. In 1829, he travelled to England and he died in 1833. Now, how did he differ from the Derosians and the conservatives? Rammohun's attitude towards Western education and socio-religious reforms differed from the conservatives and the radicals. Who were the conservatives? Conservatives of India at that time was led by Raja Radhakanto Dev, who also favored Western education. These conservatives favored Western education, but not for its scientific spirit, but for career advances and services under the British. The conservatives favored Western education. Raja Rammohun Roy also favored Western education. But to liberate, Raja Rammohun Roy favored Western education to liberate the Indian mindset. But conservatives favored Western education for career advances and services under the British. Far from regarding Western education as a means of social transformation, the conservatives defended the social and religious status quo. The conservatives believed they did not feel that Western education can bring about social transformation. No, they defended the social and religious status quo. They also endorsed the British policy of non-interference in the socio-religious orthodoxies of the native people. The conservatives, who were led by Radhakanto Dev, did not favor Western education for its scientific spirit, but they favored Western education just for services in the East India Company. For they were not interested with bringing about reforms. They did not want to rectify the social structure of India. They did not want to bring about any social transformation. Moreover, they defended the social and religious culture that was prevalent at that point of time in India. They even endorsed the policy of non-interference, British policy of non-interference in the socio-religious orthodoxies of the Indian people. Raja Rammohun Roy also differed from the young radicals who were led by Henry Louis Vivian Desrosiers. The radicals, in their zeal for modernity, virtually ignored the importance of tradition, of Indian tradition. The radicals virtually ignored the importance of Indian tradition. Rammohun Roy did not ignore the importance of Indian tradition. What he wanted to do is he tried to assimilate the good and noble value system of Europe and the good and noble value system of India. He tried to bring about a change in which both East and the West will be mingled. Best things of the East and best things of the West would be combined, would be blended. What is his conception of modern state? Rammohun Roy felt that the advent of Western power would knit India into a cohesive political entity. Rammohun Roy felt that with the coming of the Europeans in India, geographically India would be united and a strong state would be built up in India, and this strong state would take measures to rectify the stagnant Indian society. Raja felt that with the advent of Western power, India would be united, a strong state would be built up, and this strong state would be sensitive towards the needs of the people. This strong state would take steps to rectify the society. This would be an act of political modernization, ushering in modern variant of politics, and this would be an act of political modernization. Geographically, India would be united, a strong state would be built, a strong state having that power to modernize the society and would be sensitive to the needs and demands of the people, of the common people, in which rulers, alien though they were, would feel drawn to the statecraft, might take care of the growing mood of the public. They might take care of the public. They might be sensitive towards the needs and demands of the public, of the common people. Rammohun Roy had the courage and the ability to try to modernize the British state structure. He had the courage and to modernize the British state structure, in which the Britishers and its company would be sensitive towards the needs of the people. This was regarded as the most extraordinary example for modernizing politics in his own time. Now we come to the conclusion part. There is an ongoing debate amongst historians, social scientists, and Indologists on whether the intellectual awakening of the mid-19th century could be called Indian Renaissance, whether the intellectual awakening which occurred in the mid-19th century, that can be called Indian Renaissance or not. Many scholars prefer to call this as cultural efflorescence rather than Renaissance. Many scholars prefer to call this as cultural awakening rather than Renaissance, rather than in Bengali what we call Navojagarun. They believed this was a cultural awakening rather than a Renaissance. It is true that many features of European Renaissance was not present in the Indian case. Many features, many characteristics of Indian Renaissance was not present for the Indian case. But it cannot be denied that from 1820s onwards, India was moving towards far-reaching changes. This continued till the first decade of the 20th century. India was, from 1820s onwards, India was moving towards changes which continued, and these changes continued till the first decade of the 20th century. Many leaders contributed in this process. Rammohun Roy, or rather we can call Raja Rammohun Roy, was the pioneer in bringing substantive changes in the people's attitude towards life as a whole.
After hearing the lecture, let's see if we can answer the questions.
thanking you, my dear students.